This is the Gridiron Guesser, the premier guesser in all of sports.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Guesser. It's week 11, and we've got 5 absolute money picks. We're going to pick the biggest games of week 11, so stay tuned and win some fucking money. Game number 1. The Alabama Crimson Tide travel to Kentucky to take on the Wildcats. Alabama comes into this one an 11-point favorite with the over-under set at 47.5 points. So Alabama comes into this one off their dominant win over LSU. Yeah, we know Jaden Daniels got hurt, but the game was over at that point anyway. It didn't matter. Alabama continues to roll. In a year where everyone thought Nick Saban might have lost it, maybe Alabama was going to take a slide, here they sit 8-1, squarely in the picture for the college football playoff. Kentucky, on the other hand, well, honestly, they've been a little bit of a disappointment. They are 6-3 overall. Devin Leary really hasn't lived up to the hype that we thought he would be this season. And Kentucky's lost some games. They got destroyed by Georgia. They got destroyed by Missouri at home. And then they had a pretty close loss to Tennessee. So can this Kentucky team put up any kind of fight against Alabama? Let's look at some of these numbers. Alabama this season is 6-3 against the spread, while Kentucky is 5-4 against the spread. Kentucky is 0-2 against the spread, though, as an underdog. Alabama is 4-2 against the spread over the last 6 games versus Kentucky. However, they're 1-5-1 against the spread in their last 7 games in November. Kentucky, on the other hand, they're 0-5 against the spread their last 5 games of Week 11. So what's going to happen in this one? We think this one will be a pretty good game for the most part. Alabama relies on an explosive offense that isn't totally consistent, but those explosive plays have allowed them to continue to win and win 7 games in a row. Kentucky has a pretty decent pass rush, and that should help because the Alabama offensive line has not been very good this season in pass protection. Kentucky is 6-0 this season when they allow less than 100 yards rushing, and they're 0-3 when they allow more. Alabama's going to run the ball, whether it's their running backs or Jalen Milroe. They're going to try and run the ball, and then they're going to try and hit you deep on those long pass plays. Kentucky's going to hang around in this one. It's going to be a slog fest for a while. Drives are going to stall out, but eventually Alabama's going to find a way to win this game, especially in the second half. We've seen Alabama all season long turn things around in the second half after whatever adjustments they may make at halftime. We like Alabama to win this game, but Kentucky gets the cover. The Gridiron Guesser will take Alabama to win, but Kentucky to cover 27-17. Our second game here in Week 11 features the Utah Utes traveling up to Washington to take on the Huskies. The point spread in this one is set at 9.5 in favor of Washington, with the total points set at 49.5. So what are we looking at here? Utah comes in at 7-2. They've been a pretty consistently good team this year. They've relied heavily on that defense as their star quarterback continues to be out. But Bryson Barnes has played much better over the last several weeks. Utah was able to get by USC, but they got trounced by Oregon. So what does that mean in this matchup here by Washington? Well, Washington relies heavily on their offense, and their defense, not so good. This game sets up to be a pretty good matchup. Utah, great at running the ball. Washington, not so good at defending the run. Utah is pretty good at defending the pass, but they've not met a passing offense that is just like these Huskies with Michael Penix and those receivers. The Utes will be tested on defense, especially in the passing game. As we look at this game, Utah on the season is 5-3-1 against the spread. Washington, a pedestrian 4-4-1. But let's look real quick into the numbers. Utah is 5-2 against the spread in their last 7 games against Washington, but they're only 1-5 straight up in their last 6 against Washington. The Huskies are 3-9 against the spread in their last 12 games against the Southern Division of the Pac-12. Yikes. Washington is 4-1 against the spread in their last 5 games played in November. And when talking about point totals, the under has hit in 5 of Washington's last 7 games played on Week 11. So what's going to happen in this matchup? The Gridiron Guesser thinks that Utah has the opportunity to keep this game close by controlling the clock and running the football against Washington's pretty bad run defense. Now, don't get us wrong. Washington passes for nearly 400 yards a game, while Utah, on the other hand, only passes for about 145 per game. But the difference in styles will make this a competitive matchup. Utah is going to be able to control that clock by running the football. They'll also be able to score enough points running the ball to keep this game close. Look for Washington to be able to pull away toward the end as the defense begins to wear out for the Utah Utes. The Gridiron Guesser likes Utah to cover in this matchup, but give us the Huskies in the outright win, 30-21. Game 3 features the Tennessee Volunteers traveling to Missouri to take on the Tigers. Tennessee is a 2-point favorite with the total points set at 57.5. Both of these teams have gotten better as the season has went on. Tennessee had that early season disappointing outing at Florida, but since then has looked impressive with their only loss coming in the second half against Alabama. Missouri has been the surprise team of the season and looked very strong last week in their close loss to Georgia. This game figures to be one of the best of the weekend. Tennessee and Missouri are both 6-3 against the spread this season. The Volunteers are 1-2 in games away from Knoxville, while Missouri is only 2-3 against the spread at home. The Tigers are 4-1 against the spread in their last 5 games against SEC East opponents. And the Tigers are 13-2 straight up in their last 15 games played during Week 11 of the season. Tennessee is 4-1 against the spread in their last 5 against Missouri, but only 5-13 against the spread in their last 18 games during Week 11. So what's going to happen in this one? The Volunteers are ranked 7th in the country in rushing offense and will try to rely on that to win the time of possession and the game. Missouri has one of the best passing offenses in the country and will definitely try to connect with Luther Burden for big plays down the field. And don't forget about Cody Schrader. He's one of the best running backs in the conference. Expect this game to be a back-and-forth battle between two explosive offenses. Missouri will be vying for payback after last year's 66-24 blowout loss to the Vols, but a Brady Cook interception is going to be the difference here. The Gridiron Guesser likes the Vols to go into Columbia and escape with the win and that cover, 31-28. Game number 4 this week is another SEC matchup. The Ole Miss Rebels are at the Georgia Bulldogs. The Bulldogs are an 11-point favorite with the total points set at 58.5. So here we go again. Georgia sits at 9-0, and everyone seems to be waiting for them to slip up. Some people thought it would happen last week against Missouri. Is it going to be this week against Lane Kiffin and the Ole Miss Rebels? The Rebels come in at 8-1, with their only defeat coming to the hands of Nick Saban and Alabama. Ole Miss has quietly put together a great season, although some of their wins probably a little closer than they should have been. Georgia just continues to roll along. Carson Beck gets better every week, even without his superstar tight end Brock Bowers. When we look at some of the numbers here, though, Georgia has been piss poor against the spread this season. They're only 2-6-1, and they're only 1-4-1 against the spread at home. The Rebels, on the other hand, have been good against the spread this season, going 6-2-1. When we look back at the numbers, though, a little bit further, the Rebels are just 3-6 against that spread in their last 9 against the Bulldogs. Ole Miss is 6-1 against the spread over their last 6 games during Week 11. But also keep in mind the Bulldogs here, they're 7-1 against the spread in their last 8 games during Week 11. So what do we think is going to happen here? This game will be a contrast of two styles. Ole Miss will want to play fast and score quickly, while Georgia will want to control the game and the clock. The Rebels will be able to get points, especially early. Lane Kiffin seems to be good at catching defenses off guard to start games. Don't be surprised if the Rebels jump out to an early lead. Once the defense gathers themselves and the Bulldogs' offense takes over, Georgia will slowly begin to take control of the game. Carson Beck will slow the game down. He's going to hand the ball off to Edwards and Milton and have a few big pass plays down the field. Jackson Dart will play well, especially early on, and Judkins will have his moments. But once the Bulldogs are able to settle in and slow down that Rebel offense, The Gridiron Guesser likes Georgia to once again find a way to win another big game. And while Georgia will control much of the second half, we do like Ole Miss to get the backdoor cover with a late score. Georgia is going to win this game, but Ole Miss gets the cover. The Gridiron Guesser is taking Georgia 34-27. And our game of the week features the Michigan Wolverines traveling to Penn State to take on the Nittany Lions. Michigan comes in here as a 4-point favorite with the total points set at 44.5. So is Penn State the entire country's team this week? Is the entire Big Ten and the college football world rooting for the Nittany Lions to take down the Wolverines as the allegations and evidence seem to mount in this sign-stealing debacle? Regardless of what side you choose in this so-called scandal, Michigan is still a really good team. J.J. McCarthy has been outstanding, and Blake Corum in the running game has been solid all season. The defense continues to dominate their opponents, and Michigan seems to be on yet another collision course with an undefeated Ohio State team. But in their way is another Penn State team that just couldn't get over the hump earlier this season when they lost to Ohio State. Is James Franklin ever going to be able to win the big game? Are all the naysayers right that James Franklin is overrated and will never be able to consistently beat teams like Michigan and Ohio State? The pressure this week seems to be on both teams and their head coaches. Of course, we've heard all week that Jim Harbaugh will be suspended, but that doesn't appear to be the case at this point. Coach Harbaugh knows he needs to keep winning. James Franklin knows that he's eventually got to find a way to win one of these games. And this is the perfect opportunity to do that with the entire country seemingly rooting for him. It's no secret that the Gridiron Guesser picked Penn State to win the Big Ten in the preseason. And we thought it would work out in a way that you would have a three-way tie. That could all still very well happen if Penn State can win Saturday against the Wolverines. So when we look at the numbers here, Penn State is 7-2 against the spread this season, while the Wolverines are only 4-1 against the spread. Michigan is 3-0 against the spread in road games, while Penn State is 4-1 against the spread at home. Over their last 9 games during Week 11, Penn State is only 3-6 against the spread, and the Wolverines are 4-1 versus Penn State in their last 5, and they're 6-3 straight up in their last 9 against Penn State. When we look at the point totals, Penn State has hit the over in 4 of their last 5 games, and the total has gone over in 7 of Penn State's last 10 games against Eastern opponents in the Big Ten. Michigan has also hit the over in their last 5 games. So what's going to happen here? This is Penn State's chance. This is James Franklin's chance to prove that he and Penn State belong in the same conversation as Michigan and Ohio State. Both teams are outstanding on defense. They each rank in the top 10 in all kinds of categories, including scoring and rushing and passing defense. Offensively, these teams aren't bad either, as they both average around 40 points per game. The question here will be which team is able to consistently sustain drives and keep the other team's offense off the field. The Wolverines and the Nittany Lions like to control time of possession, and they do so with fairly balanced attacks. On paper, you would think J.J. McCarthy would be the bet to have the better game here. But can Drew Allaire come through here at home? And at what point does all of this off-field scandal talk become a distraction for Michigan? Well, the Gridiron Guesser thinks it's going to be this week. And while the Wolverines will play well, James Franklin is going to have this Nittany Lions team ready for this one. Expect Penn State to be able to run the ball more consistently than Michigan will, and Drew Allaire will be able to hit a couple of big pass plays that lead to points for the Lions. J.J. McCarthy will be able to keep Michigan within striking distance, but a big turnover in the fourth quarter is going to seal the win for Penn State. The Gridiron Guesser is taking Penn State to pull off the upset and get the outright win and cover 26-23 over the Wolverines. So there you have it. The Gridiron Guesser's 5 picks for Week 11 of the college football season. Go ahead, take these picks, win some money, have fun this weekend. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week on the Gridiron Guesser. Enjoy the games!